Yeah.
And we never got to
The
it.
time went so fast.
That was crazy.
One, you are live.
Hey, yo, what's good, everybody? It's your boy, Manny, and I'm coming to you live from our studio here at Elm Park in Worcester, the Manny J Media headquarters, and I'm with the one, the only, my friend, the fabulous Miss Rachel Monárrez. How are you today? I should say Superintendent. Miss Rachel Monárrez. How are you
I'm
today?
Rachel Monárrez, first and foremost. I'm
You
great.
are.
It's a great school year. It's such
It is.
it's a
Can
beautiful
you believe
day
we're back
outside.
to school already? Like, I don't want to, put a negative spin on anything, I promise, but I feel like we just finished our interview at Burncoat at the end of the year,
It does feel like we just
and we're
finished.
back already.
I know.
Which is a good thing, I guess. It's good for the school as a whole and for educators and all the people that are involved in the school year, particularly the students being back. They might not agree with me, but I think it's a great thing.
Structure is really important for
Yeah,
kids, and they
it
get to spend time with each other. And I think we've talked about this before. When we were especially adolescents, it was all about the social part of school that
Yeah.
we look forward to, and that hasn't changed.
Especially now, like, not to be funny, with technology and everything, these kids can get a little isolated if you let them. So I agree with you. Structure is very important. But speaking of summer, how was your summer?
It was very nice. My husband and I, we went to Puerto Rico.
Ooh, nice.
At the end of June, beginning of July,
Was
and
it
spent
hot?
a week there. No, it was just right.
Yeah?
It was just right.
Excellent.
It wasn't uncomfortable
Perfect.
whatsoever. We got a little tail end of the one of the hurricanes that was down there, so it kind of messed up the weather a little bit, but nothing to complain about.
So a little bit of rain, but you were able to get.
But it was beautiful, yeah. So that was nice, and then
awesome.
kind of just a lot of different things. Summer's always a little bit calmer of an experience, but I'm still working most of the summer.
Right,
Yeah.
right. So you don't have the summer off like all the kids do. I mean, you had a vacation, which was nice. You got to go to Puerto Rico, but technically you're still working.
Right.
You work year-round.
Year-round.
So you don't get the same break that the kids and some of the educators do. Because to my understanding, not all teachers get summers off either.
No, the teachers get summers off if they choose to work summer school.
Then that's different.
And
Oh,
a lot of our teachers, they have additional jobs that they do during the summer and that.
Right.
But in terms of their time with students, that they do get that time off. Our school adjustment counselors, but not everybody gets all the time, but a lot of them do.
right.
Yeah.
Well, welcome back to school, everybody.
Yes, welcome back.
We're very happy to see you back. And speaking of welcoming back, there was one crazy welcome back that was all over the news. Doherty Memorial High School. That's just the brand new Doherty Memorial High School. How was the first day there? How was it watching? Because I wasn't able to be there, obviously. There's only so many people that could be there at once. But you were. How was it seeing the kids' reaction for the first time?
So I actually didn't start my morning there, and I kind of didn't want to stress out the staff and even the
Gotcha.
teachers, right? So I came in around, I'm going to say around 10 o'clock. And it was, I really enjoy watching children kind of in a productive struggle of things.
Yeah.
And this was them walking around with their schedule, trying to figure out where's this classroom and how is this organized. And
the unique thing this year is everybody is technically a
Everybody.
freshman.
Exactly.
Everybody was a freshman this year.
Exactly. And I would say that to them. So what year are you? I'm a junior. I said, so must feel kind of strange to be you're still learning your school. But I'll tell you, the staff on that first day, they were just, when they weren't with students, I saw some of them in the hallway just kind of looking out. You go up to that 5th floor
Yeah.
and you look out, it's phenomenal when we get that. So, and I'm
Okay,
aware of that.
sorry, I'm
because
just
I got
doing my
it.
math. So 125 students a day to then have to go out and shovel your car out. Ugh.
I know.
Like what did they? Now we don't have to do that
No,
no
you
more.
don't have to do it. It's
So cool.
it was just those things where you just look at it and you're like, the thought and the detail that was put behind it is really spectacular. We had a really amazing team that made this happen.
And even it's all the little things that matter. Like even the audio systems in each classroom.
Yes. Yes.
Because I mean I'm a person who speaks loudly. I just happen to project naturally. But there's a lot of people who don't, and it's a struggle to like project your voice if that's not natural for you. And then on the flip side, there's a lot of young people who have trouble hearing,
Correct.
and you just
So, and I'm- Right.
both two birds with one stone.
It's beautiful, and then the other piece that I really appreciated, and the students see it, and the faculty sees it, and families will see it. I know we just had the more recent, the families who have children there toured it on last Saturday, actually, and then we'll have the community one next month. But where they took pieces of the original Darty and they included it, right? Whether it's a piece of a mural.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, there's just these different aspects that they really did it, again, very intentional, connecting the past to the present and then moving forward into the future. It's very nicely done.
That's so amazing. And speaking of the future, we have a lot more schools in this city. And I know everybody is wondering, when is my turn? When is my turn? So let's talk about that.
Yeah.
I know the next school up for, not consideration, but up for renewal is Burncoat. We talk about
Burncoat
that?
High School was accepted by MSBA, so the Massachusetts School Board Authority. I think the A is
I wonder what the
authority.
criteria were, because Burncoat could,
I know.
I mean, Doherty needed it too, don't get me wrong, but Burncoat.
I know. There is an application process, and my understanding is we had submitted multiple times for Burncoat, so we were happy when it finally was accepted. The city does have to show that they're willing to pay their side of the cost, and we got all that approved. So Burncoat High School is moving forward. We are in the process of what's called the feasibility study, which will be all new for me, but we have a committee that the mayor has appointed that includes community members, some school committee members, core staff, families, that kind of thing, that will be part of that committee. And we spend, I think, this first year, and I don't know how much longer, with MSBA figuring out the size, what will go into the school, all of that. The challenge, well, let me say one more thing about that. So even on the next school committee meeting, we have to submit potential Chapter 74 programs that we might put in there.
Which are?
Chapter 74 are like the career tech ed.
Okay, all right. So like in Doherty, when we went and they had the amazing auto mechanics spot. I don't know what these classes are called. Bear with me, people.
Yes.
The amazing 3D printing lab, like so many cool things. So that's what we're talking about now for Burncoat.
Yes, and we're not sure how many we want to have in there or what we can have in there, so we're putting a list forward to the school committee that includes like 20 of them, so that we can, during this study time, not limit ourselves and really dream about what Burncoat High School can look like in the
And
future.
students and families are going to be involved in the study so they can have an input of what they would like.
Yes, all of that is part of it.
Look at that, guys.
I don't know the details on it, but I know that that's all
Soon to
part of
come.
it. Yeah. That's why it takes so much time, I think. I don't know at what stage all these different things.
I mean, I think it's better than just plopping in generic,
for sure.
mixed school
Right.
property and saying, okay, kids, go ahead. You got air conditioning, you have new windows, have a nice year.
Right.
Yeah,
It's
we
much
need more
more
than that.
intentional. Now, the challenge, or not the challenge, just the uniqueness about Burncoat High is we have Burncoat Middle School connected.
I was going to ask you, how is that going to work? Because I was a Burncoat kid, in case you guys didn't know. So I know exactly what that entails. Or not entail, how changing it is going to entail, but the fact that these two schools are technically connected. They're going to need
They
the
share,
space and yeah.
and they share infrastructure,
Right.
piping and those kind of things. So MSBA had asked us last school year to submit for Burncoat High School in this process. So we had to get approval from the.
You mean Burncoat Middle?
Oh, I'm sorry.
So Burncoat Middle is being included,
Well,
maybe, possibly.
maybe,
You
yes.
submitted for Burncoat Middle to be included with Burncoat High School's renovation,
And that,
which makes sense.
yes, we had to get approval through city council.
And you get two girls with one stone.
Yeah, it really does. So we did get the approval through city council, and so we will see if we are, if that part of, like the other half of the school kind of is accepted.
I have to say, not to interrupt you, but as someone who went to Burncoat Middle and Burncoat High School, I think, or I feel like I had a unique opportunity to have a little bit of a preview for my high school years that nobody else in Worcester received. And I was very grateful for that because it made going to high school so much easier. The transition, I was not afraid to go to high school because I already knew my high school.
It's just like you're just crossing over to this next step, but it's not intimidating by any means.
By any means at all.
Yeah.
So I think it's very important, and I hope that they do include it because it just makes sense overall, and to keep that whole property and that the schools together. I think it really does work for at least for that end of the city.
It does, and the art magnet that we have that starts at Burncoat Middle and continues through the high school. Those are they're just so tightly linked that to separate the two doesn't make a whole
I
lot
have
of
to
sense.
say, you know, going through Doherty, and I saw their dance
know what
room,
you're
for
gonna say.
example,
Uh-huh.
and their theater.
Uh-huh.
You know, Burncoat has a crazy history in theater, right?
I know.
So
I know.
we're gonna have to put a nice theater in there.
I told the mayor that.
I'm glad that we're on the same page, because that's very important. We
Yes,
gotta make sure that we
absolutely.
have- And also, you know, Doherty and Burncoat are rivals, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So being that I'm a Burncoat kid, we have to have a better school than Doherty. We have to. And probably even better gym, because basketball, Doherty and Burncoat, man, and football. Listen, we got a lot.
Okay.
We got a lot of things that we got to make sure we get
Okay.
right. And I already talked to Dan about it. He told me I just got to talk to the school committee, which I've done, and I'm just putting you on notice. The media center at Burncoat is going to be the Manny J Media.
Oh, okay.
So we're just making sure we get all the. Of course, this isn't real yet. Keyword yet. We're gonna make sure we work on that and get
Growth
all,
mindset.
everything set. It's yeah,
Growth mindset.
yeah, absolutely.
Right, yeah.
And we got a couple years, as far as
Oh,
I
we
can
do.
tell,
It's
to work on that. So
5 to 7 at least.
hey, who knows the impact I'll have in the next 5 to 7
There you
years.
go. I know.
You know, yeah.
And then some.
And that's I love that. I love that. All right. So Burncoat is on the list to
Yes.
get done next. And I'm sure there's also a lot of other people. You and I know we've both been into a lot of these schools. I went to Burncoat Prep. Have you been to Burncoat Prep?
Yes, I have.
Listen, it was old when I was there. Okay, back in the early 90s, it was old. It was scary. I remember going down to the bathrooms, which were in the basement. You know what I'm talking about?
Yes, I do.
And I always thought I was going to be eaten by a basement monster. I really did. So it's absolutely time for. And Burncoat's not the only one. You have how many schools?
There are 46 kinder through 12th grade schools, and then a few specialized schools, so 52 buildings in total.
Right. And we've only touched 4 so far, right? Worcester, South, North, and Doherty.
Nelson Place. Nelson
Not
Place.
familiar.
So that one's up. It's on.
So I've heard of Nelson Place. I just didn't realize that it was renewed.
It was renewed. My understanding was something. I don't know the details. Something about maybe something shifting underneath the building, or I'm not sure. So it was a.
But it was an
Thank you.
emergency. We
Uh-huh.
needed to get this place fixed.
Yes,
And we did
that's
that.
what I was told. Obviously, I wasn't.
You weren't here. at the time.
Yeah.
Okay.
But we still have quite a few that have not been touched. Forest Grove had a renovation, not a total remodel, but a renovation at some point. I think like a wing was added onto it. So that's actually worked very nicely. So you didn't have to tear the whole school down. But we have a lot to do. Worcester East is actually next in the pipeline.
Nice. You hear that, guys? I don't know if that might be here first. Worcester East Middle is up next.
It's just a long time down the road as of
Okay.
now. And the challenge that we face, just as an overall community, is the cost that it takes to renovate these schools, right? And so the city carries, the debt of it, so they're paying off. I don't even think North High is paid off yet. I'm not sure 100%, but definitely they're paying for South.
Wow.
And they're going to be paying for
I know
Doherty.
North High it's been
Yes.
here for quite a few years. So if we're still working on, and even South has been here for a couple of years now. Like what is it, 2?
I think this is your 3 or 4,
30.
something
Yeah.
like that.
So my point is, we're
Exactly.
paying off those 2.
And
now we
we've
have
got
Doherty, which
and we're going to be bringing Burncoat on.
if you
So
just look at Doherty, you can tell how expensive that bad boy is.
that and the way that everything skyrocketed after COVID.
I will say this though, a lot of people, a lot of you out there, complained about how much was it? 350 million for Doherty.
Nearly.
I just want to say thank you and thank anybody who had anything to do with building that new school. Because if I'm going to put my money anywhere, especially as a taxpayer, can we put it in our kids? Can we put it in their education? Can we put it in their infrastructure?
Yeah.
Can we put it in, I don't want to say conditioning, but helping them to understand, right, what they deserve?
Right.
That they don't need some dilapidated, outdated space for them to be in. They need the best and the most modern.
Right.
To be the best.
Prepare them for their future,
Yeah.
which ultimately ends up taking care of us.
100%. Listen, because I'm getting old. I'm I'm not gonna speak for you. I'm gonna speak for me. I'm getting old quick, and I know before I know it, I don't need somebody to help make sure that they take good care of me.
And that they're innovative in their thinking, because we don't, I always say, we don't even know what the future holds, but we need to prepare youth to be nimble enough and flexible and entrepreneurial and just innovative in their thinking.
Right.
And the learning environment plays into that. It really does. The way that we went to school, where it was very traditional and, sit down, take notes, take a test, the workforce doesn't want that anymore. They're not looking for people that work in that way.
Right.
They are looking for people that can be creative, that can work in groups, that can really solve problems.
Yeah.
Right? And so we have to
Well,
create
speaking
that.
of, we're going to get even a little bit more serious because we're going to take a quick
boy.
break. But when we come back, I want to ask you a little bit about the MCAS to see if, that's something that the real world is looking at.
Okay.
But we'll be right back after taking a view at our few sponsors. Thank you guys so much for hanging out with us today.
Manny J Media is brought to you by
And be out here. And welcome back everybody to Interviews with the Superintendent and your boy Manny, Miss Rachel Monárrez, Rachel Monárrez. It's so good to have you. I keep forgetting the whole doctor part. You know why? It's your fault. I just want to blame you because I can't blame myself.
All right.
But you're so humble and you're so just down to earth and straight human. Like I don't even think about this fancy doctor title. You're mad cool.
Thank you.
I love that. Thank you. No, thank you for being you. You're awesome. And I think that plays an important role in being the position that you are in, as far as you're not necessarily a leader as in a power trip type leader. You're a leader as in you make everybody feel comfortable. You're like a mother figure, and we can trust to follow you. You know what I'm saying? So thank you for that. Because leadership is important, but what's even more important is how you handle that power, and if you use it responsibly. Shout out to Spider-Man. Do you like Spider-Man?
I do like
I
Spider-Man.
love Spider-Man.
Yeah.
Did you guys know she liked Spider-Man?
That's cool.
Yeah, Spider-Man is awesome. And you know who's even more awesome than Spider-Man is, oh man, I'm having a brain fart right now.
A hero? You want a hero?
Yeah, no, Spider-Man, New York Spy, young
Miles Morales?
Miles Morales,
Yeah.
thank you.
Oh.
Miles Morales, because he's Puerto Rican.
Oh.
Yeah. And so he's like the new
Uh-huh.
Spider-Man.
Oh, okay. I thought you were going to say Catwoman.
Do you like Catwoman?
I like
You like Catwoman?
I do.
See, DC, I don't know. I'm not a DC fan. John, is that bad? Are you a
That is
DC
bad.
fan? Superman and Batman,
No, Green
pretty
Lantern, bro.
Green Lantern, Flash. I mean, I'm okay with DC, but I'm much more a Marvel fan, and it might be because I was groomed by Disney. No, not appropriate. The superintendent here. Condition, is that a better word? No, but I love Marvel. I really do. I love Spider-Man, and that's really why I've always had an affinity towards Marvel. But anyway, we got way off track because before the break, what I was going to talk about was the MCAS and
I can see that
how
connection.
important. It's a smooth transition. But the MCAS and how that's preparing our kids. Is it really preparing our kids for the real world? Because my vision of the real world is not test taking. My vision of the real world is when I got hired for a job, I didn't have to take a test and I didn't have to have anyone review that test and who educated me in whatever job it is. All they cared about is, can I do the job? Am I reliable? And do I do it in a respectful way, I guess?
How do you treat people?
Behavior, right. So I want to thank one of our viewers for submitting this question, which essentially was, we as the community, I think, feel that the MCAS puts such a strain on our education system, on our educators, on our teachers, on our students, on our taxes. I mean, there's so much money that goes into it. Where is the proof that it's even helping? And can you get rid of the MCAS for me? I mean, we cool, right? I know you do a lot for me, so
yeah.
can you do the MCAS for me?
That I cannot do. I cannot. I
Good
have.
thing I don't have to take it.
Yeah. That's a decision at the state level.
Okay.
And so the state of Massachusetts at this time must off or says every school district, every public school district must test children at certain grade levels, and the exam we are to use is MCAS. So we can't get rid of the MCAS. What I think it's kind of combined in the conversation around MCAS versus preparing children for their future, and they become synonymous and they're not. MCAS is the assessment, as you said, it's the test. Preparing children for the future, those are the state standards, and they're national standards, right? They're the standards that the standards for the most part are the same ones that I was responsible for when I was in California.
So essentially, every state in our country has some version of the MCAS.
Yes. Well,
I mean, it's not called the MCAS.
right,
but
it's not called the MCAS.
Standardized type testing.
To check to see are children learning the standards, the grade level expectations from kindergarten through 12th grade.
So is this more of a test for our teachers than it is for our students?
I've heard that. I've heard people say that.
Seems like that.
And it is, I would say that it does, part of it is checking to see, did the teacher teach the standards? Did the teacher teach the standards that they are to be teaching?
And is the school actually performing for the overall better health of our children's education?
Yes, and let's remember where this all came from. So this all came from back in the early 2000s, late 90s, early 2000s.
Yeah, because I remember I was exempt. My class was the last class. I did not have to take the MCAS to graduate.
It was No Child Left Behind, which is a federal, right? And that was that required every state to show that the federal government wanted to say, we want a way to measure our children learning and to hold states and districts accountable and schools accountable. That's what this was all about. And so No Child Left Behind came. There was some that made a difference because there were some in a positive way. Some of it did, in that there were some groups of children that we were not serving the way that we know we should have been, and I'm saying a collective we, right?
Yeah.
That they were maybe graduating high school and they were not
Inner city schools.
At the
Urban
level.
school.
Yeah.
Not suburban schools.
No, and
Not
yet,
private schools. Sorry, go ahead.
no, and yet we know the children are just as brilliant as everybody else,
Absolutely,
right?
it's not their fault. It's what you're given to work with.
And the assessment then became the way to determine, are you smart enough, which is, we all know that's the problem.
Right.
It's how we've used the test along the way, and then how we've used it in a punitive way for teachers and for principals and for school districts. So then teachers changed the way they were teaching because they didn't want to be accused of not doing their job. Right? So it drives me crazy when I go into classrooms and I know when testing's about to happen because they've changed their teaching.
Yeah.
And they are now teaching like this is going to be on the test when I could have been in their classroom 3 weeks earlier and they were doing some really engaging learning.
I was
don't blame
thinking
the
that
teacher.
there's a difference between teaching and engaging.
Oh yeah.
There's a huge difference because, well, in this, come on, man, I need more time. Did you see that?
I saw it.
Time flies when I'm with you.
I know.
But in this circumstance, teaching and being a teacher and engaging your students are two different things. I can teach you all day about what I know, but if I don't engage you, how are you actually how is it gonna stick?
And how do we know that they're learning? Right? Because you can teach, that doesn't mean that they've learned it.
Right.
So it's the learning side of it, right? Which the engagement is kind of that connective glue. So I cannot get rid of the MCAS. It's not in my purview as the superintendent. I think it's the way that school districts and states and whomever has used it that has led to this feeling of it's the MCAS that's the problem, when the standards are what we really should be working towards.
Right. And so I think one of the things that I noticed, and I mean, how do you do this without, again, disrupting the teaching? And I do it in quotes because there's teaching and then there's teaching. Depends on what you're looking at.
Right.
Because I know one of the big problems with the MCAS that I saw just as a parent was there was a lot of pressure on the kid, which put a lot of pressure on the parent. And, you know, every kid learns differently. There's learning disabilities. There's all kinds of things. And then you have the educators and the teachers who, as you said, they just want to do their jobs. When it comes to, I should say it's more than doing their jobs. They want to keep their jobs when it comes to the tests. They want to do their jobs when it comes to the students, and doing their jobs is engaging them.
Right.
It's different.
Right.
That all brings me around to, how are you supporting our teachers? How are you supporting our educators so that they're not victims, if you will, of poor testing in the city, in the Worcester school districts? And at the same time, how are we supporting kids? Because I know, especially in the city with a lot of BIPOC children, there are learning disabilities, particularly because of language barriers. And they're being held back from growth because of this test. Was that a lot? I know we're out of time, so I wanted to get it all out.
You know, so I really believe that as the superintendent, it's how I message what the result of a test means. So I believe that my support of teachers, which is really through the principals, is to not use it as a hammer. That whatever results come back, they are results. I like to see continuous growth because, again, I believe our teachers are phenomenal educators. I have very strong principals. And most importantly, or just as important, I guess, I should not quantify it all, I have brilliant kids. So what I do with the assessments is the most important. And we, I share the information. We'll be getting MCAS and we'll be presenting that in October, and I'll point out this is where we're improving, and these are opportunities for improvement. This is where we need to grow. But I'm not going to go into classrooms and tell a teacher or tell a principal, your school, you're not doing your job.
Your job is online.
Right. No, it's more about what do you need? How do we support you? What did you do differently this year that maybe got results, that didn't get results? It's all about how we respond to the outcomes. And it's the same thing for children. They've told me, they started telling me right when I got here, and I was like, why are you guys so stressed about this MCAS? Until I learned, it's
because the state puts stress on us.
Well,
not us, but
yeah. Well, now I learned that it's still tied to their diplomas.
Yeah.
I didn't see that had already changed in where I came from. So that had changed a long time ago. So of course, children are going to be concerned that they've done everything that they're supposed to do to graduate, and they still, if they don't do a certain level on this test, they won't get their diploma. I understand that.
Which is crazy because I've never once in my whole adult life ran into a question on the MCAS.
No.
Never. Not like John did.
And to your point, Manny, I was not a good test taker. I'm still not a good test taker. I overthink the questions. I'm like, well, I don't know whose perspective is this from. Is this from this perspective or that perspective? This culture or that? Like, I think about it too much. And when you're doing multiple choice, you have to choose the right answer.
I don't do well with choices.
No,
I don't. I can't pick. I don't know what I want for dinner ever. Just feed me, please.
But if I could write about what I know, then I can do better, right? So it's that idea of how do we have children show what they know. I would love to see the state move in a direction of some additional ways to measure what children know. And so we're doing that. We're starting to look at portfolios as a way to do that, and then project-based learning and just projects and children demonstrating their learning in other ways. That way they don't feel like school they're not smart enough for school.
Have you ever thought about, not you,
Maybe.
Yeah. Extended learning or maybe instead of withholding a diploma, Which, I don't know, when I was a kid, I kind of got accepted to colleges before I graduated. So, I mean, if the college accepted me, who are you as the state to tell me that I'm not good enough to graduate, right? One. Two, with community colleges, why can't we do like 13th grade for kids who may not be as advanced as most kids? You know what I mean? Like, maybe there could be a program between community colleges and high schools to not keep kids 20 years old in school.
Yeah, we actually do have some kind of extended school year. I don't know what we call it, but we do have that for for children, and not just children who have special needs. So we can have like a fifth year senior, and it probably is, because I still don't. I know that we have it. I think it has to do with kids who still.
I think I would have benefited from a fifth year, to be honest with you. I mean, I'm very smart. I knew what I wanted to do. I just don't feel like I was ready for college.
Right.
I just wasn't ready.
We did last year, and I believe we're continuing it as a grant from the state. We did something called early college. I'll describe what it is. So it was children who graduated from us, but they stayed with us and did a year at a local university, but they were still ours.
Right, they were still with the public schools.
Correct. So we kept them, like made sure they had the supports they needed or whatever. And we met with some of those kids. It was just a handful of them to start, but one had used it as a gap year. Another one used it as a way to realize I can do college. I do belong here, right? And so we just made sure that they were successful.
And there's a lot of kids. That gap year thing is a dangerous thing. Because I know a lot of kids who, I'm just going to take a year off, and then they never end up going back. Because they go to work and they like the paycheck, and there's all these things. When if you retain children in education, they're more likely to stay in education.
Right.
I mean,
right.
Go figure.
Yeah.
All right. But because we are literally almost out of time, and I know John's going to put the Let's Wrap sign. He's doing it right now. I did want to ask you, what was your plans for the year? In brief, if you could give us a brief outline of how do you see the year going?
So this year, I have promised the team, and therefore I'm promising my teachers and my principals, we're not adding anything new. We're taking what we've done and we're going deeper.
Okay.
And we're spending more time.
Why reinvent the wheel?
Right. And why this is what gives like teachers and principals just fatigue when district office is constantly throwing new things at them. It's like, oh, now what do we have this year? Oh, now we have something new next year. You don't even get an opportunity to really learn the first set that you've learned, right? So we spent my first 2 years really building guidebooks and foundational pieces of information and foundational tools and supports and resources. This year, it's all about how do we use that to improve practices so children are excelling. How do we work together and share best practices? How do we collaborate with each other? How do we use data to guide the learning, not to punish? That is the work this year. And so being more intentional about when we bring principals together, when we bring coaches together, aligning that work so then we're all starting to row in the same direction so that our teachers and the people at the schools are feeling more supported. And I'll say this was a very smooth start to a school year this year.
Excellent.
Extremely so.
And I just have one more question in that looking at the start of this year and looking at the end of last year, I know you said it was a very smooth start, which is great. How do you feel things have been going as far as the
budget?
No, as far as the growth and the uplifting of our public schools from when you first got here.
Yeah.
I've seen the growth personally, so I know that there has been.
It's interesting because it almost is a contradictory conversation to the MCAS, right? Because am I going to say that we're going to see the growth in the MCAS? I don't think so. Not what I would like to see. But then on the flip side of it, do I go into schools and does it feel like, I mean, I visited schools last week and you wouldn't know, it was Monday of this week. Mm-hmm. It felt like we were already in like 3 months into the school year and it was only the third week. So learning is happening and I see that. So this is that dichotomy of the MCAS, are we going to see results? Not like I want it to be, but are the schools in a better place? They're calmer, people are happier, they feel more prepared, parents feel more engaged. So it's an interesting place to be because, from the
because
state
it shows
level.
that the MCAS, it's not really I
And
mean,
yet there's gonna be
I
some
get why
schools-
they do it as far as
Uh-huh.
like state funding and, you know, the state wanting to make sure that their schools are performing great. I get that part, but it doesn't really have an impact on overall education.
But
Which,
it's gonna impact teacher morale when we get some data out that's not gonna be as high as we want it to be. So that's where we have to keep working with them so that they don't beat themselves up. And when they are not feeling good about what they're doing, then they can't be their best for their children, right? So
absolutely.
balancing that.
And then lastly, I promise, superintendent interns. I just wanted to shout them out because that's amazing. You have interns in your office now.
Oh, you saw them
I
on,
did see the post.
during the summer we did.
Oh, it's during the summer.
Yes.
So are you not doing the program throughout the school year?
It depends. It kind of, we have to, it really depends on what they're interested in.
Okay.
Yeah, so we do
I
that.
thought it
with
was
Jack.
such a cool dynamic to have the kids be able to tell you how schools are running and how it's affecting them, and you know maybe what changes you can consider, and then you could take that information and feedback back to the schools directly and say, hey, the kids are telling me this, and maybe this is something we should work on. So I just think it's an amazing program, and however you do it, thank you for doing it.
Oh, you're welcome. You know what we do have though, and we're starting it up. We have the superintendent student advisory.
Okay, same thing.
So that
Similar.
happens
Similar.
every month. Every month
Excellent.
I have a group of probably 40 students, and they're the ones who they keep it real with me.
I'm sure they do. I'm sure they do. Well, we are really out of time. We've actually been out of time, so I'm going to stop now and just let everybody know that you will be back.
We'll be back.
We'll see you
Absolutely.
for your first quarter report card.
That sounds good.
Yeah?
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
And we'll have Dan make that happen. Dan, thank you so much. I appreciate you, my brother. And I guess it's time to say goodbye. Do you see me like not wanting to say goodbye?
Yeah.
Really hasn't
Well,
been.
I'm like sad too, so
Yeah.
we'll make it happen again.
We absolutely
I'll
will.
enjoy it.
And until next time, thank you all for tuning in with us and hanging out with us today. I hope you learned something. And until next time, this is your boy Manny and
Rachel, Superintendent Monárrez,
Dr. Monárrez.
Dr. Monárrez.
This is Manny J Media Community Delivered. We'll see you real soon. Peace.
Silence.